Warning. This episode of the HoseCast includes graphic descriptions of surgical procedures, crass references to genitalia, and minimally veiled slanders towards ex-girlfriends. Listener discretion is demanded under pain of being reduced to ash and cinders.
I'd like to turn back the clock a little bit for this one, specifically to the year 2005. While the bought and paid for media was adamantly ignoring the impending threat of Unicron and his savage attack on Cybertron, I was living in an apartment in what was then called Green Meadows with a woman who was then called my girlfriend. I was between jobs at the time and we were planning to spend a long weekend visiting her parents in New York. I remember sitting up and burning some nice road mixes for the ride up and back and going to bed pretty late. After an hour or two of sleep on the couch, I picked myself up and dragged myself to bed. Some indeterminate amount of time later, I woke up feeling as if I had been shot through the abdomen. I am not a person known for a meticulously healthy diet, so when I woke up with abdominal pains of some kind, I've generally imagined that I'd abused my digestive system in a way that it did not feel obligated to suffer without complaint. That being said, this was different. Even so, I just figured I'd push things a little bit further than normal and that I could simply relieve the pressure in the normal way. In fact, this did not happen. In more fact, nothing was relieved at all. Angry about this, I went to bed and tried to sleep it off. This also did not happen. By the time the then-girlfriend woke up, I had concluded that, far from being a digestive issue, this pain was concentrated in my back. Since I had slept on the couch for a couple of hours, I thought I might have strained or twisted something. We proceeded to try some ice on my back. This did very little. We tried heat. This did even littler. As the then-girlfriend's mother worked in the medical profession with chiropractic-type people, we decided to call her. This produced the notion that what I was suffering didn't sound like a muscular issue, but more like a kidney problem. Great, thought I. I'm about to end up on a damn transplant list. The pain was mounting at this point. It was also coming time for the then-girlfriend to decide to call off of work to help me out. I had to practically beg her to do so. In retrospect, I think the fact that I had to beg her to stay with me during a very painful and frightening experience should have served as a foreshadowing of how our relationship would one day end. But I digress. A trip to the emergency room and some very expensive and not entirely insurance-covered scans revealed that I was suffering from kidney stones. I didn't even know what kidney stones were at this point. Hell, I can't say I'm entirely sure today. But they hurt. A lot. What I got out of this experience was a prescription for Vicodin and the suggestion that I go home and try to pass the stone and to call a urologist. I repeat, a urologist. Urologists are something an old man with pee problems has. Not something you have when you're on the shiny side of 30. Needless to say, I was not pleased. Then, as I was preparing for discharge, some hospital employee comes in and tells me that I need to give a urine sample. I proceeded to tell him that I hadn't peed in damn near 24 hours. With less sympathy than I would expect in such a situation, he told me that if I couldn't produce a sample in the usual way, he would have to employ a catheter. Oh yeah, I think not. Give me 5 minutes. He got his sample. As you may guess, the stone did not pass on its own, presumably because it would have been less comedically appropriate to do so. So I had to go and see this urologist fellow called Herman. He finally came in and told me he would need to do an operation to remove the stones, if I was agreeable to it. Oh yeah, I was really likely to say no to that. So I got to spend a couple of days at my parents' house preparing for this. I had to do this because I couldn't very well drive myself home, and the then-girlfriend refused to take any of her precious vacation time to be with me during this ordeal. Yeah, I should have known. In the prep room for my surgery, some nurse told me that my blood pressure was too high to do the operation and I might have to have it done another day. I want to run this down for you. My mother drove me to the hospital in a truck with no shocks, and we then proceeded to wander through an empty labyrinth of under-construction parts of the hospital at 5 in the morning as if we were in the frickin' Legend of Zelda, waiting to be attacked by balls of gelatinous goo. After signing in, my mom told me she was going to the bathroom and would be right back. 37 seconds after she left, I was called to go and get ready. So I went in and I put the open-backed paper hospital gown on and flopped onto the wheeled bed thingy, and then a nurse comes in and stabs me in the back of the hand with an IV, and then some inconsiderate bitch shows up and takes my blood pressure and tells me it's too high. You think? Give me 10 minutes, it'll go down. Well, guess what? It did. The next thing that happened was that a nurse of some kind came in and informed me that I would be receiving a spinal injection. This should be a prosecutable offense. Not giving someone a spinal injection, but just kind of strolling up to someone and telling them matter-of-factly that they're about to get one. This is a very emotionally violent thing to do to someone who's going to have to endure it in a few hours' time. Most of the wait for the actual surgery was as boring as waits usually are, save the abject terror of knowing I was about to be shot in the spine very soon. What actually happens when they do this is that they have you sit on the edge of your little wheelie bed and try to assume the fetal position. Apparently this spreads your vertebrae apart so that the needle doesn't strike the bones, which I can only assume is a good thing. I will say that being shot in the back with a long needle comes a close second in intensity of pain only to the actual kidney stones. And if I recall correctly, the thing had to stay in there for like 30 seconds, during which time 2 people were attempting to break me in half from behind. Not fun. I don't know why, but they actually perform this little procedure before transferring you to the table in which the surgery is actually to take place. So at the point at which I was beginning to lose feeling below the waist, I then had to drag myself to said table. I hope these people have rethought their procedure since then. I certainly gave them an earful. Now, sans pants, my increasingly numb legs were thrust unceremoniously into stirrups so that the procedure could begin. It was at this time that it dawned upon me that I was about to have my pee hole invaded by a laser, and I was still conscious. I inquired as to whether I was going to be put out for this, and the answer came back to me, well, we can if you want, but it's not necessary. Some people find it interesting to watch. Yeah, some people may also find it interesting to have nightmares for the rest of their lives. Knock me out now. Thankfully, they did so. As sedation typically works, the next thing I was aware of was being removed from the room in a groggy state. They get it? I asked the same jackass who told me about the spinal injection. Oh yeah, they got it, he assured me happily. I want to see it, said I. So he held up what appeared to be a small vial full of what appeared to be water with what appeared to be small flecks of pepper floating in it. It's a damn good thing that I was still under the influence of sedatives at the time, or I would have been extremely upset that that was what had been causing me such pain. The time in the recovery area was even more boring than the time in the waiting area had been. At this point I remained entirely numb from the waist down, and I have to say that out of all the things that I had experienced thus far, the sensation of not being able to clench my butt in any way, shape, or form was definitely one of the most unsettling. Even more so than being the youngest person there by about 30 years. Once the feeling in my ass and legs returned to me, I was taken to be prepared for discharge. It was right about now that I remembered something that I had been told. In an effort to keep my ureters open, in case of any remaining debris, a pair of long strings called stents were left in my tract. As my feeling came back, the odd sensation of having a pair of strings partially in and partially out of me began to set in, and it isn't a pleasant one. When you were in high school, did a science teacher ever do that experiment where they take 2 beakers and proceed to pour the water from one down a string and into the other? It's pretty much the same thing. The strings, which apparently ran clear up into my bladder, served as a constant trickling conduit for liquid. The less said about this, the better. After being in the discharge room, a doctor entered. A, shall I say, very attractive lady doctor, who proceeded to fling the sheet off me and say, well, everything looks just great here. Why, thank you. After a cursory evaluation, she explained to me that due to the nature of what was going on down there, the first time I stood up I would instantly need to pee very badly. I wasn't feeling anything of the sort, but I accepted her professional opinion and prepared to get to the bathroom. I'm not really sure what hit me harder, the fact that I did, in fact, go instantly from 0 to out of my way in about half a second, or the fact that, due to the strings, the act of urinating now looked and felt like absolute fire, meaning that it burned unimaginably and was bright red. The doctor felt that this was no big deal, that it was to be expected, and I shouldn't worry about it unless it started to look like Hawaiian Punch. Doctors are way too desensitized, if you ask me. I spent the next few days at my parents' house, the then-girlfriend still not being able to take a day off to keep an eye on me. I mostly sat on the couch and tried not to move at all, since any kind of motion caused a little twinge from the string area, which was not fun at all. I firmly remember my brother coming home from work and asking how I was doing. Well, I have a pair of strings hanging out at the end of my dick. How do you think I feel? Oh, he said. And then after a few minutes, if we pull on him, can we win a prize? I hate him for how funny that was. This whole story wraps up with the day I had to give 2 separate urine samples for entirely unrelated purposes. I was starting a new job at FedEx on the same day that the stints were to be removed, and I had to take a drug test, always a waste of time, as I'm in a tie for the least illegal drugs used in Pittsburgh with everyone else in Pittsburgh who has never used illegal drugs. Before that, I had to go back to the urologist's office, and, urologists being what they are, I had to give them a sample too. I was a little weirded out when I was told to wait not in an examination room, but in the doctor's regular little office where they talk to people about all the unspeakable things they're going to have to endure to get well. I was further unsettled when Dr. Herman said, "Okay, let's get those things out of you." "Here? Oh yes, just take your pants off and we'll get it done. Oh, and here." He handed me some paper towels and told me they were for catching anything that might leak out. Still not getting it, I did as he asked. He then proceeded to put one hand on my shoulder, grasp the strings, and pull hard, as if I was his personal lawnmower and he was trying to start me. Thankfully, there was very little leakage, but the sensation that I was a water balloon being quickly drained was a very unpleasant one. Thank God it only lasted 2 seconds. So in the space of a week, I was given enlightenment on several medical fronts that I did not care to be enlightened on, was violated by a laser in the name of destroying some errant rocks in my excretory system, and billed an obscene amount when my insurance didn't cover everything. All in all, though, I'd say it was worth it to get this enjoyable little tale, and to be able to share it with you, even though I'm sure you probably didn't want to hear it. But you really ought to know who you're dealing with.
I told you not to drink! I should not have bought you them drinks.